let's regroup. So, you accept that your inner being knows what you want.
Yes.
And you accept that your inner being is broadcasting that to you.
Yes.
And that the hang-up is not that your inner being doesn't know, because it does, and isn't that your inner being isn't telling you, because it is. So the hang-up is you can't quite hear. So you got to do anything and everything you can to get so you can hear better, which means you have to be willing to let yourself have some fun. You have to be willing to let yourself gravitate toward something that feels good. We've been telling this story a lot lately, a story that we're about to tell you, because it gets there faster than all of these words that we're offering to you so far. Esther, she meditated, she woke up, and suddenly she had this very strong, happy impulse to learn the music system in the house. Been in that house 10 years, never really understood how the music system worked. Never cared before this morning. This morning, she's ravenous about it. Ooh, think about this music system. So she sits down, starts pushing buttons on a little keypad and has a television screen up, and she discovers all kinds of things that were very easy to discover because she wasn't in the I can't do it mode. She was in the wouldn't this be fun mode because she was in the receptive mode, and that's what we were saying to her. Wouldn't this be fun? Now, we knew that if she could get there, that she could get someplace else, and she could get someplace else, and she could get someplace else, and she could get someplace else. But we know the same thing that Jerry knew about Esther. She just needs one turn at a time. You give too much, you kind of get lost in the process. Are you following? So the impulse for the music system was enough for her for a very satisfying moment. And what difference does it matter what you're doing if what you're doing is satisfying, yes? So she had fun with the system. She figured it all out. She figured that she could play lots of different types of music, and she could play it as loud as she wanted to in many different segments of her house. Outside in the courtyard, outside on the patio, outside on the deck, outside so that all the neighbors could hear. Outside over here, outside over here. She's just pushing buttons, and then she's going through the different genres of music, enjoying this and enjoying this, enjoying this, and then she finds rap. Rap, when it's loud, it's so very good. What she was listening to, it was so good. It was moving her in new ways, and she was finding depth of understanding in what was being said, and it was surprising her and delighting her all at the same time. And then she was done with that. She went on with her day, and the next day she sat to meditate again. So the next day she's meditating, and she comes out of meditation, and this is what the receiving mode feels like. When you've quieted your mind and you are coming out of meditation, and then a thought comes to you, there's a very strong probability that that thought is coming from your inner being because your mind has been quieted, so you're not tuned into other things. You're tuned in. You've allowed your vibrational frequency to rise to the compatibility of your inner being. And so the thoughts that you receive right after meditation are really good thoughts to follow. So she comes out of meditation, and she has this ravenous desire to start moving the furniture around in her house. Been there for a long time, looked pretty much the same for quite some time. And she's just kind of looking around, thinking about the possibilities and realizing that she's not going to move it herself, but she really wants to move it. In fact, she wants to move everything. Suddenly, everything looks like it's in the wrong place. It just seems like everything could be in a better place. The whole room looks like it should be better. And things that are in this room should be in that room. And things that are in that house should be down at that lower house. It sounds like madness to someone who has not just been meditating, but the feelings are so strong and so happy. It's not, oh, I should move the furniture around. It's, oh, I really, really want to move this furniture around. So she got on the internet. First thing she found, 2 men in a truck. She didn't need the truck, but she needed 2 men. She called them. They came. And Esther is having such a good time. They were such nice people. And they're moving that over there and that over there and that over there and that down there and that up there and that over there and that over there and that over there. And then a lot of it they put back to where it originally was. Because most of it had been sort of in a really good place before. But it was really fun to show that to herself. And so she moved it around. And it took quite a while to move everything around. And she was having such a good time. It was so fun to have people who could so easily move so much around. And just the fact that they could move things around made her want to move more things around. And so it was very delightful moving things around from place to place to place to place to place. And then now they're looking at her because this girl is having way too much fun for somebody her age. And they want to know what she's about. And Esther's talking to them about how much she loves living here, and Southern California is so great. And one of them says, it is wonderful, but I'm leaving. And Esther said, why? Because I'm going back to Alabama. Esther says, why? Why? He said, because I am a rapper. And I have some work in progress. And Esther said, hang on a minute. So she goes into her musical system, punches some buttons and turns the volume up, and rap is now happening everywhere around. A really, really good number is being played at that moment. And Esther comes out and she's looking at him and he's looking at her, and she's looking at him and he's looking at her, and she's trying to hold her body still and doesn't want to because it's really, 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 really good. And then he says, what do you do? And Esther said, I'm a teacher. And he said, what do you teach? And she said, rap. But then she began talking to him about what she teaches. She has some books there. She signed them. They got into a conversation about that. So what we're getting at is there isn't anything in the world that pleases Esther more than this, whether it's this many of you or whether it's one of you. Nothing makes her feel happier than for you to find answers to your questions and for you to fulfill your dreams. And so with that active vibration within her, what's the path of least resistance? Her inner being knows the path of least resistance. Her inner being not only knew what Esther has to offer, her inner being and the inner being of this young rapper knew what he was looking for. And universal forces know what cooperative components are. Everyone non-physical knew that it would be really good to get these two together. And what was the path of least resistance? If Esther had received a download, Esther, there's a man, he drives around in a big truck. See if you can find him. Talk to as many men in big trucks as you can find until you find the one that's looking for what. And here are the clues. He might be rapping, but there's no way Esther could have gotten there then. In other words, the path of least resistance was the way that it worked most. The path of least resistance means it satisfies many, 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 many things in your vortex. That was satisfying to Esther on all these levels. The money that you make is going to be satisfying to you on all kinds of levels. The mate that you draw to you will be satisfying on many levels. Your inner being knows everything that you want and knows what is, and hear this, not what's the most productive way to get you there, not what's the fastest way to get you there. What is the path of least resistance way to get you there? What's the path of least resistance way to get you there? Because the path of least resistance way is the only way to get you there. Because if you've got resistance, you're not going to get there. So it's got to be the path of least resistance way. And the path of least resistance way has to be the best way to get there because it's the only way that you can get there. So it has to be enough because it's all you've got. You get what we're saying? It's all you've got. You can't be less resistance than you are in this red hot minute. But your inner being never stops offering you impulses. And once you know that, then you tend to start listening. You start listening for the impulse. And if you have this new criteria within you that you're listening for, not the criteria of what will sound the best or what will look the best or what's the shortest, but what feels the best? What's the most satisfying? What's the most satisfying? That's what you're looking for. What's the most satisfying? Then what begins to happen is, you see, the fact that this little rampage of us offering and Esther receiving took place over a relatively short period of time, 2 days period of time, after 2 days of meditation, 2 15-minute segments of meditation. Because it happened so close together, Esther was able to make the association between the impulse to listen to the music and what happened a couple of days later. She even understood that the whole point of moving the furniture around was not really to move the furniture around, because most of it got put back the way it was. The point of moving the furniture around was to have an opportunity to meet this person who was looking for her and she was looking for him. If you're not trying to get all the way down the road and figure out everything, if you can trust that your inner being knows everything and that your inner being knows where you stand in relationship to it, and this is the piece that you've got to accept above all other, This is the most important thing. In fact, this is the only thing that we really want you to take away from this whole conversation that we've just had with you. Your inner being wants you to be satisfied. Path of least resistance always feels a little funner. Path of least resistance always feels a little clearer. Path of least resistance is clarity instead of confusion, and fun rather than lethargy, and enthusiasm rather than boredom. Path of least resistance always feels a little better. But you all have trained yourself mostly, oh, we love you so much. The reason that you don't hear usually is because you believe more in suffering than you do in feeling good. You believe that the path to your discovery and the path to your accomplishment is in sacrifice and struggle and hardship, and it isn't. It isn't. That's the path of most resistance. Oh, I think I'll go out and struggle my way into well-being. I'm miserable, but it's worth it. And we say, we're asking you to pay a terrible price of joy. We know we are. And we're asking you to accept a lot. We're asking you to accept that your vortex exists because it does. And we're asking you to accept that your inner being is aware of it because your inner being is. And we're asking you to accept the love of your inner being shining on you because it always is. And we're asking you, most of all, we're asking you, listen, which means you got to put yourself in a position that you can hear. Which means you got to quiet your mind. You got to stop the static before you can hear. And what you're going to hear is not going to sound like world peace. It's going to sound like moving furniture. It's going to sound like figuring out a music system. It's going to sound like going to Taco Bell and getting something to eat. It's going to sound like taking a walk. Going to feel like, it may not even sound, it's going to feel like we love you so much and we know so well that if you will do this, you will like it. Without the promise of where it will lead. This, you got to like this because you're not ready for all of this. And if you need all of this before you feel better, you're not ever going to get there. This has to be enough. It has to be enough. Esther thought, for just a minute, really? I'm going to sit here and play with this music system? Yeah, I think I will. And the more she did, the more fun she had. I'm going to move furniture around? Really? Yes, because I can't stand not to. I can't stand not to. It was such a high flying feeling. She couldn't stand not to. And most people, when you get those ridiculous impulses, either you or your wife talks you out of them. What? You're going to do what? You're going to do what? Why are you going to do that? And because I feel like it doesn't fly usually with most people, does it? Because you feel like it. Well, I feel like you cleaning out the garage. That's what I feel like you doing. I feel like you cleaning out the garage, and I feel like you going and getting a job. That's what I feel like. I feel like you should make something important happen in this day, and I don't think moving furniture around or listening to music is the answer for you. Sometimes it's nice to live alone. You sort of get to follow your own impulses and find out where they lead. And until you are willing to find out where your inner being is leading you, and that's really the whole point of this conversation that we're having with you, we're talking about a vortex that you can't see. That must seem like crazy talk. We're asking you to have faith or trust in a vibration that hasn't translated into things that are tangible. We're asking a lot of you to be less human and less tangible and more feeling the vibration of this vibrational reality. And we're asking you to accept that this receiving mode is happening, and we're asking you to quiet your mind and listen for it. And we know it's a lot to ask because it's not tangible enough to really see anything that's happening. So you don't know for sure. You don't have proof soon enough for most of you. But when you take us at our word and try it just a little bit, and you find the satisfaction of quieting your mind, and then you find the satisfaction of a powerful, clear thought coming to you, and you have enough confidence in this process that you follow the impulse so that you get to experience, or witness is the best word, witness the result of following that impulse, then you've got it. You've got to put yourself in a position where you consciously receive the impulse, and when you witness the outcome of having received and followed that impulse before any of this is going to make sense to you. But once it does, you only have to do it a time or two or a time or two or a time or two or three or four, and then You'll be hooked on alignment. You'll be hooked on all of the help that non-physical is giving you. You'll be hooked on your own empowerment. You'll feel good where you are. You'll be willing to be satisfied right where you are, even though it hasn't come all the way out to this fruition, because this is enough, because it has to be enough. All right?
Thank you.
Yeah.